Hello my beautiful people. So something a little different for you this time. You guys are used to seeing me read the tarot for you. You are used to me talking about numerology. It's time for some astrology. We are stepping into eclipse season, and yes, you will see the whole internet and all of YouTube is awash and abuzz with all of the with all about this stuff. I've got my trusty notes here. The reason I'm doing these solar eclipse specials, and we'll be doing all of the eclipse specials, is because not only is it a different energy, I mean, we've had a little dip into it, but this is where it gets real. This is where it gets, intense, and where it gets serious. And because we're switched from the Leo Aquarius axis, which, trust me, I felt, because I am a Leo rising and an Aquarius sun. So I really felt those ones, and actually I can now, looking back on it, really see the benefit of it. At the time it felt like absolute fucking shite, if I'm completely honest with you, because I felt like a ping pong ball in the middle of a storm out at sea. That's just the truth of it. You know, there were moments that were really great that I could see the benefit of, but there were some moments that I was like, do you know what, I don't know how this is going to serve my greater good, but in hindsight, I can see how it worked. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about before we go into the video itself, right? And I've got, my trusty notes here, because as many of you know, astrology, tarot I can do with my eyes closed, right? In fact, I probably could do it with my eyes closed, even though it's all about the symbols, right? But just from the feeling, I would be able to do that. Whereas astrology is such a bigger and broader subject, and I don't have nearly as many years under my belt in that field as I do with the tarot, with the cards and the symbols there. So I always have notes because I'm just not as practiced. I call myself a baby astrologer. A lot of people say, I think you're being too harsh on yourself, but whatever, it's not about that. So with that said, before we go into your personal, horoscope, eclipse scope, tarot scope, whatever you want to call it, right? Yes, there will be tarot. Come on, that's what I do, right? There's a few things that I want to clarify on. So you see this, I've drawn it out, and yes, it looks pretty, and it looks mysterious, and it's got the symbols on the wheel and all the rest of it, and we're all familiar with what a chart looks like. Well, 90% of people nowadays are familiar with what a chart looks like. The problem that this chart creates is that people tend to see this kind of thing, especially a big event like an eclipse, as just a flash in the pan. They kind of see it like a static moment. And while it is true that the specific moment of the eclipse will imprint your life with a specific type of energy, right? And that's really important to remember. So when you read somebody's birth chart, when you look at somebody's personal astrology, when you see a personal one of these for somebody, what you're actually looking at is a specific moment in time that is imprinted into their DNA, right? There's, all of the stars aligned in a certain way to give you a certain energy that was going to unfold. Astrology breathes, it moves. Human beings are not, we're multifaceted. We move, we breathe, we grow, we change, we evolve. Just like the moon, we are cyclic. We go through great, awesome periods, and we go through low, sort of not so awesome periods. And that's one of the things that you really need to understand. This isn't just an event that will happen on this day and then you can forget about it. It's kind of like a toolbox. Imagine it's like a gift that the universe gives you on a specific day and says, right, here you go, I'm going to give you this, and you get to unpack that over the next 3 to 6 months. It's never just a flash in the pan moment, and this is why people talk about the eclipses so much, and why people often say, well, this will happen, over the next 3 to 6 months, and sometimes even further beyond. Like I said, I can see a lot of the stuff that I'm doing and living and experiencing now in relation to the eclipses that we finished up in Aquarius and Leo. So it's really relevant stuff, but you need to understand it's a process, not an event, right? It's an unfolding of energy that is imprinted into you on the specific day. So pay attention to that day, because it may well have elements of what this energy is going to be like for you over the next 6 months, what it might unfold, how it might grow. But don't let this video, don't let me, don't let anybody ever reduce you or your infinite beingness down to just a specific set of events that are all about your second house is your money. Yes, it does represent that, and it's good to know that. And it's great to see, if we can predict these things accurately, which is wonderful. But don't let anything, any system in the world, astrology, tarot, numerology, don't let me, any other reader, whether tarot reader, astrologer, whatever, don't let anyone or anything reduce you down to those separate sort of compartments. You are a multifaceted being. And it is good for you to, so there's the dualism, bad Rafi. And you are a multifaceted being, and it's important that you allow yourself to be all of that and to grow throughout these processes that take place, right? Don't ever limit yourself to anything that anyone tells you. You always get a chance to choose. Now, before I go off on a complete tangent, I will give you some overviews. So, solar eclipse is an initiatory energy. It's a beginning of some sort, because it's kind of like a supercharged or jacked up new moon that's like, yeah! It's got lots of energy behind it. And when you get a new moon, you've got the sun and the moon together, right? That in itself is the god and the goddess coming together in creation. Now, this one is taking place in Cancer, which is really important for loads of reasons. So the whole axis of Cancer and Capricorn are going to be lit up. Cancer represents the mother, in the fourth house, protection, love, nurturing, nourishment, that place that you go to seek shelter, to seek comfort, or even lock yourself away from the harsh realities of the outside world. It's your feelings, it's your attachments, it's your bonds, right? Whereas Capricorn, and the Cancer is the natural house of the moon as well, so it's really worth keeping an eye on that. And it represents the mother, because it comes in the guise of the fourth house. Whereas Capricorn, where we've got quite a lot going on in the opposite sign, and this is where the eclipses are going to bounce between, right, is the 10th house. This is the external structure, the things out in the world, but it's also the father. It's where we meet authority, it's where we meet governance, it's where we meet the things that we appear to not be able to change. It's where, the 10th house is your career, how you show up out in the world, how you are presented or received by the wider world. So these are really big things to look at, right? And because it's the father, it's the line in the sand that you meet, where you will go no further, where you meet authority, where you get that kind of, no, you will not pass, you cannot do this. And it's not always about the negative stuff. Sometimes it's to hold you back from something or to teach you a lesson, right? So when you see that mother-father axis, that's kind of what's going on there. So it's really important to pay attention to that stuff. What I've talked about, it's a process. Good to look at where this is happening. Right, so try and stay with me on this, and I'm using myself as an example so that you can do this for yourself, right? So look at where the eclipse is taking place, and then think about where that happens according to your sun, moon, and ascendant. So my moon sign, I'll start there, is in Cancer. So this suggests that my inner world, possibly even my home, may change over the next 3 to 6 months. Something about my emotional inner world, or even my home, my dwelling, may very well change because it's happened, or the identity of my home, or something of that nature may very well change, right? As a Leo ascendant, this is happening in my 12th house. My 12th house is all to do with the past, the things that are hidden, that are private, subconscious drives and not necessarily desires and urges, but it can also be hidden enemies. It could be people that don't necessarily, present themselves as one thing, but don't necessarily mean you good. Then finally, as an Aquarius, this is happening in my 6th house, which is all to do with my work. So something to do with my old work, my old workplace, my old work life could be coming through. So those are my big three, sun, moon, and ascendant, right? It's good for you to find out where they are, because it's going to give you that kind of different dynamic of understanding, so that you get an idea of where this is happening, why, not why it's happening, you know why, because of the astrology, how it's likely to unfold, and what that could possibly mean for you. So one of the things that I've put here is it could suggest that things are about to take a big leap forward over the 6 months because of services rendered, right? So the 12th house is the past, and the 6th house is work. So it could be some efforts that I've already sown in my own personal past over the last 6 months may now start to yield results or dividends or rewards, you know, depending on what I've put out there. And I'm currently crossing fingers, toes and bits at the moment, like thinking back like, shit, have I done enough? Hopefully I have. You know, I've done my best to be of complete service to you guys in and of the world. So with that said, let's get to the personal astrology for each sign. Take care. See you in a moment. Capricorn, welcome to your solar eclipse special with me, Raphael. So before we start, not before we start, let's just go straight into it. So this eclipse for you, my dear Capricorns, is taking place in your 7th house, right? So your 7th house, because this is you here, Capricorn, your 7th house is your mirror in the world. It's your partner. It is the people that you have a relationship with. Sometimes that relationship can be professional. Sometimes it can be platonic. Sometimes it can be competitive, right? Your competitors or open enemies are also found in your 7th house. So the eclipse is like an initiatory energy. It brings something into your life that unpacks over 3 to 6 months. So with that said, your relationships are going through a massive change, right? Something about your relationship is now going to evolve. And I believe that those of you that are already in established partnerships and bonds are now starting to grow. You're now starting to evolve. There's something about your relationship that is growing, where they go from strength to strength. The bond between you and a partner now is just getting, like, literally changing, but from a deep level. And the beauty of it is it suggests that, especially those of you that have come through a difficult period, as we've probably seen, a lot of you will now start to experience what the rewards are for that. It will also, and I'll talk about this more in a minute, see how you personally have changed in relation to your relationships. Now, the other thing is, my trusty notes here, for those of you that are single, it could bring, actually, first of all, for those of you that are partnered, one of the things that may come in here, because it is on this axis with the 1st house, so, you know, we've talked about the eclipse now. For those of you that are single, the eclipse could bring somebody in, but it could also bring several opportunities to bring a new partner to you, to bring somebody in that is completely different and somebody that is actually supposed to be in your life. And the reason we say that is because the eclipses tend to bring those, you know, they tend to bring the major arcana cards. They tend to bring those fated experiences that are beyond what we could imagine or create for ourselves, right? Yeah, for those of you that are partnered, you'll be finding relationship goes from strength to strength. For a select few of you, it might come to an end, but that's not for everybody. It would literally just be for those of you that have literally tried everything and there is nothing else for it. You may find that a new beginning comes through an ending, right? Ultimately, it is an eclipse. The other thing is we find competitors here, as I said, and you'll thrive off of this. It's almost going to be like a combative sort of energy where you're, you know, you see people and you're like, yeah, I like how you do that. But there's like this fun sort of banter where you're pushing and goading each other. And so, you know, when it comes to business, collaborative efforts, there could be that sort of camaraderie, you know, where you can't, you know, where you goad your friend and you're like, I bet you can't do this faster than me, or do you know what I mean? Like, you push each other, but in a good way, in a way that is actually mutually beneficial. You see a lot of that coming up, and there's a lot of fun to be had if you can do that. All right, so then you've got the opposition. So Saturn, especially those of you that are Capricorn rising, yeah? These are mostly going to be relevant for your rising sign. So if you're not a rising Capricorn, it will be relevant for you if it's your moon, more so your sun, but not as much as if this is your ascendant. So if this is your 1st house, Capricorn, you've got your personal ruler there. So Saturn in Capricorn for a Capricorn is actually a good thing because it's your ruler at home, right? It gives you a different type of energy to what it gives everybody else. Now, the fact that the South Node is there coupled with it, it does suggest that something about you yourself has changed. And it does suggest that you're letting go of, or really rebuilding yourself from a deep level and presenting yourself in a different way, and also shirking these limitations that have held you back in some way, shape or form. How you identify with the world and how you present yourself to the world is ultimately shifting and changing. Now, because it is in opposition, and oppositions are uncomfortable energies, right? They tend to create friction so that two things are vying for our kind of our attention. So we have to not make a choice, but we have to find a balance point. So your first house and your seventh house are on the axis, and they are looking at that. Now, with this, for those of you that are partnered, you could be coming into the acute realization that you are represented by your partner as much as you represent yourself. So how your partner behaves or misbehaves, so to speak, could reflect on you, right? And this could be you really saying to them, look, hang on a sec, I don't mind you being who you are, but remember how you behave also affects me. It affects us as a couple, because what you're doing has a bearing on what I do, and vice versa. So you could really see this, you know, I'm changing, I'm evolving, I'm going that way. And if you're going that way and veering off the tracks and all the rest of it, or going off the rails, so to speak, you could create problems for me. So it could see you really highlighting that to a partner. For those of you that are single, who you're becoming, how you're changing, how you're shifting, you could be a lot harder. It's like, you know, whoever it is that's coming in now has to get through all the layers of new understanding and wisdom that you've gained, right? So going to be a really interesting time for you. What else does it say? As it's coupled with the South Node, it does suggest that you are saying goodbye to some aspect of yourself that you perceive to be outdated or maybe superfluous to your relationships. So it's like any of your personal baggage. If it's just not relevant and you know that it's affecting your relationship, Capricorn, you could be saying, look, you know what, actually, that about me needs to change, needs to shift. And one of the things I admire about Capricorns, they know if it's not working and it's something I need to fix in myself, all right, it's uncomfortable because I'm practically perfect. I'm sure Mary Poppins she's like a Cancer with a Capricorn rising, or some sort of combination of that, right? All jokes aside though, you guys have that ability to look inside and say, well, actually that about me needs to change. So you know what? Fuck it, let's do it. Because you're a boss, because you can handle shit like a boss. That's how you do it, right? That's how you lead by example. And you know, what better way to do it? Then you've got Jupiter in your 12th house of your you know, your past, all of the baggage and all of that stuff there. And then it's squaring your 3rd house, right? So this is some aspect of your past coming back that affects a sibling. This is an interesting one as well. For some of you, you could, I mean, over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, you and your siblings could have a lot more conversation or communication, and it could be in relation to something that you have in your shared past. Now, the interesting thing is here, because it's squaring, it's another uncomfortable energy. It makes you uncomfortable enough to say, fuck this experience, I'm not down for it, what can I do to change it? It could see you and a sibling uniting against an outside external problem, issue, or of some sort that comes up. It could see you and a sibling, because it is the 12th house as well, it could be something that you share as a secret, that you've kind of like, you know, you and me know this, we'll never talk about it, you know, to anybody else or whatever. It could be something of that nature that comes up that has to be looked at. But the thing is, anything that comes out of the 12th house comes up so that it can be looked at, assimilated, and then finally let go or released. Yeah, that's the other thing as well, because it represents your skills. This could be you picking something up that you used to work on, or that you've been working on for some time but haven't had the right avenue to get it out there. I mean, the 12th house with, you know, with Jupiter there is expanding your past and going through it and finding all of the meaning behind the previous experiences that you've had and bringing them to the table through the third house of the square of saying, right, well, you know what, shit, my past is ugly and there's some awful stuff in there, but I'm going to use that to communicate to people that you can change things, that you can shift things, that actually, you know what, it doesn't matter what happens to you, what you transmute that shit into is ultimately what is really, really fucking important. Sorry, I got really there, but you know, I felt that for you guys. I really felt it. Then finally, you've got the Uranus in Taurus sextiling the eclipse, which is taking place there in your fifth house and your seventh house and your fifth house, right? Which is really nice because it suggests that there's a lot of fun and vibrancy, lots of banter. For those of you that are partnered, lots of banter, lots of fun times. Maybe even moments where the banter goes a bit too far and you're like, oh, you know, that was a little harsh, but you laugh about it anyway. You know, those are some of the best moments we have in relationships, I believe. For those of you that don't want that experience, please be careful because there's a highly fertile energy, fifth house, and, you know, fifth house rules children, creativity, you know, all of that sort of stuff. If you are able to run the numbers and take the risks, take calculated risks, go for it, because the fifth house is speculative investments and stuff. Because it is an eclipse, I would wait till you're familiar with that energy first, so about 2 to 3 months in before you start, you know, gambling away the Mercedes or whatever. I'm joking. All jokes aside though, especially on a especially in a personal relationship, you could be finding that you have a lot more chances to let loose, to have fun, and this will come. What I really like about it is it suggests that it comes because everything else is easy to you, right? So these things are being brought into the spotlight because everything else is actually kind of ticking over quite nicely. Does also suggest that there's a wonderful creative endeavor on the way that will produce amazing results and may often require you to move quickly, so stay flexible, light-hearted and fun. Awesome. What more could you ask for, right? So with that said, let's have a look at your card for the eclipse. What is the tarot's message for you throughout this eclipse season? That feels good. And it is the Strength card. Tap into this emotional energy of your heart, right? Allow yourself, and because it's in Cancer, it's about nourishing and nurturing and protecting something. Do that with your own heart, with your own relationship. Find out what it is that you truly, what does your heart desire? What do you want for your relationship? What do you want for your wider relationships? And more importantly, are you prepared to really go after what it is that you want? The Strength card rules Leo. And aside from everything else that Leo may be, they are not afraid, right? The lion is not afraid to go for what it wants. It sees it, it spots it, stalks its prey and goes after it. Capricorn shares that same energy in the world, but maybe not necessarily so overtly when it comes to the heart space center. It's time for you to open that up and to go for the things that your heart truly wants and needs and desires from you. And it's okay for you to be vulnerable. By showing that little bit of vulnerability or revealing that you actually do have a chink in your armor, you will gain so much more from it, especially when it comes to your relationships. I wish you an abundance of all of that good stuff. Have a fantastic time of it. Take care, and I'll see you soon.